Hello, thank you for tuning in. My name is Sean. Right now, I'm in my room in Cosmos Oasis in Canggu, Bali, Indonesia, the world. And yeah, I've been asked to tell a story from my life where I feel like I've been thrown a curveball and then to talk about how I've dealt with that. So that's what I'm going to do today. And first of all, I want to just say that I really appreciate the opportunity. I also really appreciate Bali street mums and what they're doing in the world right now, or here in Bali more specifically. I think it's very important that poverty is dealt with, and it's something that only now that I live here do I really, have. It's the first time for me that I've been close to true poverty, and now in this crisis, it's all exacerbated. So I think it's really important stuff what we're doing here today. So thank you for tuning in again, and let's just get started. So my story is going to be about my dad. So growing up, my dad, actually from when I was a very young age, my dad was a functioning alcoholic. He basically, when he would come home from work, he would go upstairs and drink, and that was the first thing he would do when he came home from work. So my brother and I were like all excited to see him and play with him, but he wasn't really, his priority was on his addiction. Meanwhile, he was also a very successful, charming man, and in corporate world, so everything seemed okay on the outside, and we lived in a very nice house doing all the normal stuff, but there was like this layer of negativity over it, and I only really realized that when I was 16, 17. I really started to realize, like, hey, this is not really how life should be or how a family should be working. And the weird thing was that no one was talking about it. It was literally completely silent. My mom just pretended that nothing was happening. She kind of wanted to do that to protect us as well. And so we would go through Christmases, like basically every single family occasion would be overshadowed by this dark black cloud of either my dad being drunk and extremely annoying and embarrassing, or he would be extremely irritated because he wouldn't be drinking, and if he wants to drink and he can't drink at that moment, it's gonna piss him off to the point where you get pretty aggressive, not physically luckily, but he would start like verbally abusing my mom and kind of emotionally manipulating, and it was very, very like manipulative and negative. And he was also quite an intimidating person, could be if he wanted to be, so it was quite scary at times to say something about it, so I never really did until I got to a bit of an older age. So that was like through primary school and secondary school. It was all pretty, seemingly functional. And then, but at the same time, there was a lot of not being able to relate to other people because my family situation wasn't that healthy. I wasn't really getting the lessons about how to behave properly, and I wasn't really able to connect with my classmates that well. I mean, I did have friends, luckily. It wasn't terrible, but I still was kind of puzzled as to why, I felt kind of different from the rest of the people that I was surrounded by. And so I see it was seeming like I was not going to do well in school at all. Like they put me in the lowest level, and for some reason, like I started climbing back up the levels, and then I found theater production. So I got into theater in the school, and I started to feel at home finally. That was I think in my memory the most at home I've ever felt is when I was doing a nice big role in Don Quixote. And at the same time, I developed a really big passion for playing the drums, and I started to imagine myself as like this famous drummer, and that was like my ultimate dream, is to become a successful drummer in a world famous rock band. So I actually went on to study drums, which I kept up for a year and a half. And then I switched to music production, which was even more passionate about, you know, making full songs, having the ability to like really touch people's emotions and get people to feel certain things just by playing some music and writing some words and singing them. And it was kind of around that time that I was in university that my dad lost his job. Like, he was made redundant. It wasn't down to his failure. He was actually still doing really well, but the company wasn't. So he had no more job, which allowed his functional alcoholism to just go crazy, just go nuts. And he would have nothing to do at home. He wouldn't really have a life's purpose, no plan to do with his days. So he would end up just sitting at home. And what does a functioning alcoholic start to do? He starts to drink because he has nothing stopping him. That kind of progressed into like 1 to 2 week long binges where he would literally, for 24 hours a day, he would be wasted. Like, he would have these little bottles in his cupboard, like hidden away. Like, he was a pretty crafty guy. You could literally not find those bottles if you searched for hours and hours. And he would just like reload, and even like in the middle of the night he would wake up, and he would like reload and go back into his coma or whatever he was doing. And it was just really disgusting. And I just I wasn't around very much. I was at university, luckily, but it just got worse and worse and worse. And when I got into university, I was very insecure. I'm sure many people are when they get into university. But what I did is I got into a relationship kind of which covered up all those insecurities, so I felt safe, you know. And I stayed in that relationship for 10 years. So throughout my whole 20s, I was in this relationship which kind of allowed me to remain in my comfort zone, and it kind of dampened my spirit. And meanwhile, my dad got worse and worse and worse and worse, like to the point that he was being brought home by the police on a regular basis. Not from doing stuff wrong, but just because he was like walking along the street, like falling everywhere and like hurting himself. And brought home by neighbors, by friends from the neighborhood who knew him. So he started to become like everyone kind of knows him, I think, in the town where I grew up. And it's very embarrassing, very like so many embarrassing stuff happened. I'm sure if you've had like an alcoholic parent that you can relate. And it was just also very worrying because he was also talking about suicide to me, like pretty explicitly. And I just became, and also actually my mom was talking, she got so desperate that she started talking about that she really wanted to kill him, you know. She literally said, you know, she just feels like taking a knife out of the drawer and, you know, ending it for him because of the bottled up emotions that she had against him. And so around the time I was like 26, I was working 3 jobs at the same time. 3 jobs, mind you, that I hated. Definitely not my kind of job. And at the same time, I was building up my voiceover business. So trying to become a full-time voice actor. And at the same time, I was basically every day waking up worried that I was going to get a call that my dad had jumped in front of a train or something, or he died like in a pool of his own vomit. You know, kind of like a really, like, that was my biggest fear, that he would be die without any dignity. And for a good few years like that was always in the back of my mind. And especially that period around my marriage, when I got married, I don't really know how I got through that period because I think it would have been more realistic for me to get like a complete burnout, but luckily I was spared of that. And 5 months later, I did get fired from a job that I hated, which was awesome because that allowed me to go full-time into voiceover, which I'm now still doing. but things really started to change once I started to take responsibility for my life, so for my own situation. So, you know, like I said, this relationship wasn't really what I truly wanted. So I ended it after 2.5 years worth of marriage, 10 years worth of being together. I had to own up to the fact that this wasn't what I really wanted, that I'd gone and had my family from Australia come over to see me, promise that that I was going to be with this woman forever, and actually have to come back on that promise. So of course it was difficult, but like the more and more honest I started to become with myself and with other people, the more and more weight that got lifted off my shoulders. And also I broke contact with my dad because it was just coming too much to me. Actually, I'd say like the peak of that was on my mom's 60th birthday. We took her out to Rotterdam, and we got a call from my dad, who had locked himself up for 3 weeks in a hotel room. And I mean literally locked himself up for 3 weeks in a hotel room with just alcohol, and he wasn't eating for 3 weeks, and he was drinking 24/7. And when he called us on that day, he said that he needed help, and we thought he was just asking for attention. So we kind of ignored him. But by the end of the day, the hotel staff had got him taken to the hospital by an ambulance, and I still ignored him because I still thought he was just asking for attention, and I thought, fuck off. You're just trying to ruin this day that you've not been invited to. And a few days later, like, apparently his situation had gotten worse, so I was like, okay, well, then I better go and see him. And what I arrived to was him strapped to the bed with bloodshot eyes, and he was, of course, just a skeleton of a guy, not having eaten for 3 weeks. And he wasn't even aware that we were in the room. He was like possessed. I don't know if you've seen The Exorcist, but yeah, I had to go in there and see my dad like that, and he was like mumbling drivel, like total nonsense. And yeah, that was the moment that something changed for me. And I don't really know what happened there, because it feels like pretty, it felt very, very difficult, because I wasn't sure if he was going to be like that forever. And like, that was my nightmare, you know, seeing my dad, the guy that I so admired and that I could see so much potential in his abilities, to see him like with no dignity strapped to a bed. So that's kind of the time when I started to kind of let go. So once I'd let go of my marriage, a few months later, actually, my mum divorced my dad. A few months after that, my brother broke up with his girlfriend of 5 years, and quit his job at the same time. I ended up breaking contact with my dad because it was only bringing me stress. And so many shifts happened. I sold all my stuff. I got rid of my house that I was living in. I didn't own the house, but it was still like, now I have no fixed address. I was living in Holland. That's where I grew up. Excuse me. And then I moved to Berlin and kind of escaped from it all. And that was about a year ago, a bit less than a year ago. Hey, I just remembered it's coming up to a year ago now, closely. And yeah, I just decided to completely let go of everything and let go of my identity, all the stuff I was holding on to, like my belongings, you know, getting away everything, even my most precious music gear that I didn't really use anymore because I wasn't feeling creative through all the emotional turmoil. I started to sell it, all this stuff that I was really proud of, and every little bit that I sold, you know, it hurt, but also some weight was left off. So this past like 1.5 years has been all about letting go of the old me and everything that was holding me to that identity, and just discovering who I am and peeling back the layers. And I'm still peeling back the layers, and I've never felt so alive in my life, and I'm still traveling after 11 months, and I have no reason to need to go back yet. So like I can just travel indefinitely. I'm living in this beautiful island. I feel really in touch with myself, like my emotions, like in contrast with back when I was getting married, like I literally didn't feel anything. Now I'm feeling so much, and it's great. All the variations of emotions, the good ones, the bad ones, like I'll take it all. I'm surrounded by really, really cool people. I'm sure you've seen some of the other shares on this channel, but some amazing people here who have brilliant stories, amazing skills. And I'm working really hard on my business to create a more, even more successful voiceover business. And my creativity is starting to come back. And I think it's mostly down to me taking responsibility for what I, what I truly want. And I think that's where I'm going to wrap the story up. And just to bring it back to why we're here today is Bali Street Mums. I think at the end of the day, we're all the same. Like, we're humans. We want to eat, we want to sleep, we want to love and be loved. And right now there are mums on the street with their kids, and they can't even feed their kids. They can't even give their kids a place to sleep. And when I think of that, like, I literally get goosebumps, because, you know, I've just told you my story, and sure, I've had some struggles, but I mean, compare it to being a mum on your own in the street. So I just want to thank Bali Street Mums for the work they're doing, and I want to encourage you to check out their website, and if you feel called to help them out financially or perhaps in another way. So thanks for listening, and I wish you all the best wherever you are.